meeting to order at 8:35.
Okay.
Now, what you're getting there,
He's already got that.
I had some correspondence with Michelle Holton. So,
Do you have another one of, what did I pass down there?
That should go back to Jack.
you get a spreadsheet and a set of minutes.
Which Actually,
Not that
one of those
the-
should go-
The stapled one.
Yeah, thanks.
Now I think we're all
Okay. So, she had a couple of suggestions, which I put into a draft amended minutes. Basically, I think the minutes that I drafted said the booster pump for Turkey Hill was bonded, and actually they're getting a loan from the state
State,
revolving fund of
right.
the Clean Drinking Water
Yep.
and Groundwater Trust. It's not a bond. So we're correcting that, and I think you can see from the things I've either done a strike through or a bold for the inserted stuff. So I will move the minutes with those amendments.
I second it then.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And Michelle also sent me the spreadsheet of their anticipated withdrawals from capital reserve funds.
It's quite substantial.
Well, some of it doesn't happen for a year, or until 2020. But the $99 for
Oh,
the
I see,
backhoe
yeah.
that we talked about, and $75,000 there for engineer planning, that'll be due, I guess, any day now, probably when the Mueller report comes out. The timing is just as secure, right?
Oh, I just got it. Sorry about that. It was slow this morning.
And, well, they've been promising that thing's it's gonna come any day now since last September. $267,000 for a main extension into Reed's Ferry.
Inline extension, yep.
Yeah, do you know where that's going, Jack?
Well, yeah, in order to put in that Flatley property there, what they had to do is, the only way they could hook it so that they could cross the highway was to come all the way back to that Bedford Road extension. That was the only place. So you know where that cemetery is there?
Yep.
Okay, right down there is where the old extension and the new extension was. So they had to come back. They already had a line that went out on the west side of Route 3.
Mhm.
Okay, but they needed the water on the right side. So they had to come all the way back, and the first intersection that they could get it across the highway was back at that Bedford Road intersection.
So, $267,000 to run from there up to the Flatley development.
No, Flatley actually paid for that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, just for the pipes coming back. Wait a minute. Oh, they were gonna replace the old system. That was the old system, if you remember, the original water lines for Reed's Ferry.
Okay.
Okay, so they had to replace those, and then they had to put in the construction, in other words, holding up, paying people to regulate traffic and everything. And I guess that's where the 267 comes from. It sounds a little bit high.
Well, we don't have a final bid yet.
Month-long project.
Yeah, they haven't done the work yet, so it's
Yeah.
kind of a May, June project, I think.
Yeah, when the ground is soft enough to dig. Yeah, they need to replace that whole west side with a 10-inch pipe, and then come back and then put, I don't know how wide the other one will be on the Flatley side.
Well, I was just curious if we were paying for it or Flatley was paying for it.
No, Flatley was paying for the line to them, yeah.
But that extension
Oh,
going up DW
oh.
Highway is because Flatley's developing, right?
Yeah, but they had come to the limits on, I guess it was, the original 3-inch pipe that they had in Reed's Ferry. Reed's Ferry had its own water system for a while.
Right, Shed Harris system.
Yeah. So, I, all I know is that's what they're going to do. They're putting in a 10-inch pipe.
Okay, well, the thought crossed my mind, number one, are we paying for something that Flatley's getting the benefit of? And then the other one was, oh, wait a minute, this is fire protection in Reed's Ferry.
Oh, I see what you're
That
saying.
was the original Shed Harris
Yeah,
stuff, was fire protection, it was a private water system.
you're absolutely right.
Until the MVD took it
That's
over.
the old Shed Harris
So,
water system.
I don't know if that means anything to us or not,
Yeah,
but we've been talking about fire department, when all along the history of it is water system.
good point.
Well, anyway, we should move on through the agenda. There was a question about the George W. Carroll Fund. I went back and looked that up. The George Carroll was a selectman at the time of Addie Shed Harris' death. And she left all her stuff, as you recall, to the town for fire protection in the village of Reed's Ferry.
I remember going over those original documents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, here's another name from the past. Harry Watkins made the motion
Uh-huh.
at town meeting to amend the bequest to say that a committee be appointed to divest all of Addie's assets. And that committee then sold everything and built the water tower.
Interesting.
So, and George Carroll was the chairman of the committee. That was part of Harry's motion. And then, some years later, he donated $10,000 or so to, among other things, fire protection in Reed's Ferry. So they're parallel. And I guess that clears up what we had questions
Yeah,
about.
I had actually, I was able to find the will of Carol the
Yep.
other day. So, this is a whole package of stuff that I have on historical documents.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
The one on Carol is right there. And
Alright,
it
thank
looks
you.
like he actually, I got another one for Bill. Looks like his bequest was actually to donate money to the Shed Harris Fund, which is why the purposes are aligned, I guess.
well,
Thank you.
yeah. Yeah, the concept of the Shed Harris Memorial Fund kind of disappeared when the MVD took over everything in Reed's Ferry.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm sure it was all done properly, I have no idea at that point if they compensated the fund or whatever. I vaguely remember that Dave Johnson had
Yeah.
maybe $50,000 to start with. He put it into Washington Mutual Investors Fund, and it just sat there. Nobody came asking for any money. So there haven't been any withdrawals for, I guess there was one for some equipment at the Reed's Ferry Fire Station. And after that, nobody's come, although I know Mike Currier and Paul have talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I looked at that with the latest MS9, and there's like $400,000 cost basis on the income side, and another $500,000-600,000, depending on whether you're looking at cost or market, on the principal side. So that account has $1 million in it,
Yeah.
and that was kind of triggering the thought process about what really is fire protection in Reed's Ferry.
Right.
maybe at some point in time, we should tackle that for a better definition. I don't know where to start, to be honest with you. Anyway, that takes care of the Carroll Fund. I appreciate this. Is this
Wow, yeah.
scanned as well?
I don't think I did that. I should. I'll scan it just so we have another means of,
Yeah, I haven't heard back from Chuck Miller.
he never got back to you?
On
He
storing
must have-
stuff.
He must have lost that email. So, the one,
It's interesting, I mean, you guys probably have already read this, but I give and bequeath to said town of Merrimack the sum of $8,000 to be safely invested in a trust fund to be known as the Shed Harris Fund. The income from said fund to be used in such manner for the purposes as shall be deemed best to decrease fire hazards and give added protection against fire to the village of Reed's Ferry in said town of Merrimack. Well, I mean, that is, I mean, if there's a fire truck sitting down there that can help put out a fire in Reed's Ferry, I mean, it's pretty general. I mean, I don't think doesn't say that you have to have a fire truck or any apparatus or any devices or anything parked up at Reed's Ferry.
right.
No,
it
but-
just has to be
Reed's Ferry.
available to decrease the fire hazards in the village of Reed's Ferry.
Yeah, I think when Charlie Hall was the fire chief, or Herb Duxbury maybe, when they built the fire station up there, they were more interested in that fire station, and it used to be manned, and, you know, over a period of time, it's diminished in its purposes.
But I mean, still, doesn't that say that you could use money to buy a fire truck?
It probably does.
I would think if it's.
Nobody's ever come to us and said we want to buy a fire truck. The last request we had was for stuff at the Reed's Ferry Fire Station, and I wasn't on the board at that time. I don't think Jack was either.
Going into 20 years now. How far back was it?
I couldn't tell you because I wasn't on the board. I just remember the story from Dave saying I told him if it was a truck, they couldn't have it.
Well, I was with Dave.
Okay?
Yep.
Well, anyway. You're right, it does seem pretty broad.
Or even if you were talking about building a fire station that wasn't necessarily in the Reed's Ferry district, if it was still available to cover Reed's Ferry in the event of a,
Yeah, I mean, if it was legitimate, I mean,
yeah.
if you said, well, we're gonna put it towards South Merrimack Fire Station, that probably isn't within the geographic area of who would service Reed's Ferry. I mean,
Right.
it would be a little bit of a stretch.
Yeah,
Well, first response would
Be
Be the
be
sensible.
from the
Central.
central station.
right.
Arthur Gordon, by the way, for whom that fire station is named, was also on that committee in 1926 to develop all of that stuff. And I don't know if he was just a selectman or related to the fire department or how he happened to get his name on that.
Just in terms of these historical documents that I've been trying to track down, the one gap I had is the Stockley Fund for the school. I have not been able to find anything on the Stockley Fund. So I don't know if you have any,
Well, if I have anything or we have anything, it would be in the
would be in the
file drawers
file.
where you already looked.
Yeah, I've already been through all that stuff. So I found the will of Frederick Stockley, who passed in 1936, but he left everything in his will to his wife, who passed much later. But the date of her passing doesn't coincide with the date that we have as the origin of that fund, which I think is 1960.
Two?
Yeah, we've got it as 1960, but it appears she passed in 1980 something. She lasted a lot. She lived for quite a while after.
Well, she could have established the
Passed.
fund.
But, yeah, through some other
Still
instrument.
living, that's what we
Right.
did with the prize spelling contest
Yeah.
fund.
But I just can't find any documentation. I called, or I contacted the charitable trusts division, and they said they have nothing in their files on the Stockley Fund either, so,
Did you talk to Matt?
I did not talk to Matt.
He sometimes has some of the stuff that's
Okay.
related to schools.
All right, I'll try and contact him.
Um, So I guess the next item is the ambulance versus fire truck. Did I have a, there it is.
Yeah.
You want to run us through this, Tom?
Yeah, so you have a packet of stapled pages that were on the desk when you got here. It's a memo on top, to the trustees from the town manager. This is our capital reserve, funding request from back in June of 2018, where we go through and list out all the items, that have been purchased, through the various capital reserve funds. And we have an issue that was identified just recently between the second two funds listed on this list as you go down from the top. So the fire equipment capital reserve fund and the ambulance equipment capital reserve fund. There was a misclassification between the two
Okay.
when we made this request. There were two expenditures, two invoices that were included in the fire equipment request that should have been part of the ambulance equipment requests. When you buy an ambulance, there's a lot of stuff that you have to purchase to outfit that ambulance and get it ready to go.
Wouldn't they take that equipment from, or most of it from the old ambulance?
For whatever reason, that was not the case in this instance.
Yeah, we've been
so.
through that. Some of the stuff, the stretchers and so forth, very cleverly, the people that make the new ambulance don't make it so it fits the old stretcher. The wheels that lock into the floor go different, or some other things. Some of it is, if the ambulance is worn out, so's the stretcher. So they're looking for new stuff to upgrade the whole thing. And of course, nowadays, the ambulances have significant amounts of electronics, so they can interact with the emergency room at the hospital. So Merrimack, you get treated in the ambulance and go straight to the OR. You don't stop in the emergency room first, because they've done all that stuff in the ambulance. We have very high-class stuff here. And I'm happy to take a ride if I ever need it.
Yeah, right. So there's one invoice from Zoll Medical Corporation for $14,220, and a second invoice from Stryker Sales.
So Tom,
Yep.
so I take the 221, 262.96. Do I subtract 31,529.22 from that?
Yes,
And I add it to the ambulance
correct.
number? Okay.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
And the second one was from Stryker Sales Corporation, an invoice in the amount of $17,309.22. So that's where the total comes from. The issue came up when Paul McCallie was trying to reconcile the projections he had of capital reserve fund balances that he's giving in the budget presentations to the town council to what was actually the balances, the actual balances per the Cambridge Trust statements, and he was off between the two. And upon looking at it, he identified the reason for that was that this request was
In error.
misclassified by that amount of money between those two funds. So he would like to have that money, to have Cambridge Trust just move that amount of money from
Together.
one to the other. In this case, it would be the ambulance capital equipment fund would have to reimburse the fire equipment fund for the $31,529.
Just a journal entry.
Basically just a journal entry, and we don't care about going back to the beginning of the year necessarily so that the interest is insignificant really in the grand scheme of things, so we can do this. I know they just released their February statements, so we could do it as of March 1, just so it gets corrected in this fiscal year, and before we make the next request in June for funds. So that's what we're trying to
Well,
do.
I'll leave it up to them how they do it.
Yeah.
But the monthly MS9s that we get are basically just a working.
True, they don't go anywhere, they're
They're
not
not the final
reported to
report,
anybody.
so,
Correct. If it could be done as of July 1, that would be ideal, but,
Well, we'll give it to Lisa and let her
figure it out.
figure it out. Do we have a related motion?
But to make the
Make the correction.
corrections, okay, I'll so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I was just looking at this forestry vehicle. $75,000. So where does that live?
I know the old forestry vehicle used to live at the Reed's Ferry Station. I assume the new one probably does as well.
Wow. At least we're using that one garage.
I know
for
it's been
something.
out.
Okay, following up on the Gibson Scholarship.
Okay.
We approved going to $4,000 and with a provision that it might have to drop back down again. Communicated with
Right.
Tom Gibson. He said, no, okay, just leave it at 3,500
Right.
and we'll revisit it in the future.
Okay, the 3,500. Yeah, I remember your memo on that, but was that in, I don't see that in the minutes. I see us passing the 4,000
Right.
increase. But what document was it that you told us that he had agreed to 35?
It was just an email.
Just an email from him.
Already.
Okay. Portfolio review. Two things come up. One is, when do we want to invite the MVD back? They're willing to come either April or May, so that we can get an update on the cash flow after the March 26th annual meeting. I don't know if they'll have details ready by the April meeting, so I'm more likely to go for May, but if there's anybody who thinks we should do it in April, it's okay.
I don't think it's necessary to do in April because anything they need won't be that imminent. So why don't we wait until May and then we'll probably be able to get more information. They'll probably understand what their strategy is. That would be my thought.
I agree with that.
Wait a minute, you said you didn't want to take it up in April.
Right,
Yeah, because they're not gonna need any money from us within like a short period of time, so if we give them till May, they're gonna be able to reconcile everything and figure out exactly. They'll probably have more time to work with contractors and everybody else to figure out timelines and that sort of thing.
Okay. I'm, based on the fact that our next meeting was scheduled for April 19th,
yep.
I guess I'll have to agree, that is, it's, okay, so in May, when is our meeting in May?
17.
17th? Okay. Okay, do we need to vote on that or anything? I agree with Bill on
And then we'll get Cambridge Trust to come in June,
that. Okay.
I think.
What would the June meeting be?
When would it be?
Cause I'm gonna be traveling
We
into
could-
June.
Let's work around Bill's schedule. We're not tied to anyone.
You got a calendar?
The 20th to the 28th of June, I won't be around.
So what's the
Let's
third,
have it early.
I don't know what days of the week that is. What's the, you got your
Okay.
calendar right there, Jack? What
Yeah,
are the
sure
days?
do. Okay, they go by 7, 14, 20, 21, and 28. So
Would it have to be the 14th or a different day other than a Friday, I guess?
let's have it on the 14th.
14th?
That's Flag Day.
Yes,
We
it is.
can, celebrate by coming to the trustee
Wear your
meeting.
best flag.
Okay. Well, I guess I could.
I guess that's not a town holiday, is it?
No.
Flag Day, it even says it here. Huh?
Okay, anything else we need to consider as far as the updates on the portfolio? Anybody buying Boeing these days? It's cheap.
You talk about, we talked about the ambulance here, and it went into my head about, when the whole thing with that idiot light that they could put on the Boeing plane,
It was an option.
it was an option.
Pay extra for it.
I mean, and the same thing came to mind with the ambulance. Can you imagine missing some little feature that's state of the art now, and then, you're being
Mhm.
sent to CMC and they don't have that little feature and you die?
Right.
I mean, there's a balance, obviously, but when when an idiot light costs probably thousands of dollars from Boeing, but realistically, it's not that big of a deal, an idiot light, and they don't put it on every plane? Give me a break.
They've started flying those again, the Maxes, right?
I don't think so.
No,
I
not
think
yet.
so.
I don't
They're
think so.
working on a
still working
software
on it?
fix for the issue, but,
Rats.
yeah. Somebody just canceled an order for 50 of them.
Wow.
But Boeing stock is actually, even at
It's
today's,
actually held up pretty
even
well.
at today's price, it's still at a historically high level. I think it was a couple of years ago, it was probably half of what it is today.
I can tell you that in December of
I've never owned
2016,
it.
it was $151.
Yeah, and what is it now,
And
360
now
or
it's
something?
well, it was up as high, almost up to 400, never made 400, and dropped down into the 370 range and kind of fluctuating there with the news.
Fluttering, is that the right word?
Yeah.
Wandering.
Um,
Do we have any of that in our?
I don't think we have any, do we?
I don't recall seeing any
I
Boeing stock.
didn't specifically look. It's been a good stock up until, a week ago.
It's sad to say, but it'll probably be a good stock long-term.
Well, because of the defense
Well, there's
side.
nobody, I mean,
There's not a lot of competition.
you
got
only have
Airbus,
Airbus and
Airbus.
Boeing, basically,
Pretty much it.
and a couple of smaller regional type of jet producers.
Well, there's Grumman and there's Lockheed.
Yeah, but they
On
don't
the
really,
defense side.
they don't really make commercial jets.
Right.
Not so much anymore, you're right.
I don't think we have any in the portfolio, though.
No, I don't recall seeing any.
So the other question,
Should we
and I
have-
don't know if we should talk to Eric about this or not, but I noticed the 10-year is down to 2.5%. And I don't know what the Fed did this week, but,
They said no hikes for the rest of 2019.
right.
Wow.
I did hear that. I just wasn't sure if they'd actually done it. Which may put a little bit of a damper on things. I don't know.
Mhm.
Well, we had an inverted yield curve, I guess, briefly the other day, so I guess if things remain the way they're going, yields are gonna trend back down again. I would think, if we go into a recession or whatever. I think yields, I don't know what to do, I mean, other than you can go grab shorter term yields But, you know, I don't know if we'd wanna lock ourselves into any long-term stuff at this rate.
Well, do we want to do anything in anticipation of meeting with Cambridge Trust in June? I mean, they're doing this stuff on a daily basis anyway.
No, I'm just expecting an update in June, not that we have to do any radical movement.
Okay. Scholarships. We have had all but one scholarship has been claimed and paid. And I sent an email, I got email addresses for the last few from the school district. And I sent an email to the last one, I can't remember her name now. It's a girl. And I haven't heard back. So I said, you know, either make a claim for the award or let us know if you need an extension or whatever, and I just haven't heard anything. So that one's kind of up in the air.
I haven't seen your election posters out on the streets or anything lately.
I'm just gonna put them up at the last minute. You know, it's raining, you don't want to put them up in the rain, but I appreciate your thought that I hope you'll vote for me.
I certainly will.
Thank you, thank you.
I've never put out any election.
Well, you've always run unopposed.
Oh, okay. You have somebody running against you?
No.
Oh.
Still appreciate your vote.
I will, I'll give you.
It's a vote of confidence, if you will.
Okay.
And anybody who's out there on TV land, we do have elections coming up second week of April, April 12th, I believe.
Yes.
And March 26th is the MVD meeting,
Right.
which is very important.
Unfortunately, I won't be able to make that one.
I think the election's actually April 9th, Tuesday.
April 9th.
April 9th, thank you.
Okay, yes,
I
the
stand
second
corrected.
Tuesday.
And I think we're all done with the Watkins Prize Spelling Contest. And I haven't heard anything back from anybody on the speaking.
Yeah, I was
Contest.
hopeful. They were saying that there was some interest from the students, which is what's been lacking. But when you say you've heard the last of the spelling, I mean, no, the spelling contest, you mean as far as awards and cost and everything? Because it was,
Yeah,
because we expect them to have it again next year,
right.
right? Okay.
We did pay, they sent an invoice and I paid it for the refreshments as well.
Oh, okay.
I think it was $20 or something less than that. Wasn't very much. And I think, unless somebody else has anything that we want to dig into, I think that's the end of the new business.
Okay.
Anything from the town side, Tom?
No.
Oh, gosh. I might be able to make my other meeting.
Well, we have, well, it's early to ask that. I was just thinking about if we meet on June 14th, will we have the
Yeah, we'll have it, we try and do that.
request?
We try and do that the first week of June, so that should not be an issue.
Okay.
Did we ever get an agenda? I don't recall.
For tonight, today?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was one of those two pieces of paper, but there's an extra.
Okay. So we've hit everything. Are you entertaining a motion to adjourn?
I am.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?